Hi, welcome to Forge and Anvil. I'm Alan Rogers. We're coming to you today from the Tully Smith Farm at the Atlanta History Center. Our show today is about weapons making, and we'll be visiting some blade makers as well as a Civil War encampment here on the premises. Babs Nicholson will be doing our project for us today, and she's down in the shop. Let's go see what she's doing. Hey Babs, how's it going?
Hey Alan.
Working hard this morning.
Oh yes, we have a fire going over here.
Yeah, well tell us where we are.
We're at the Atlanta History Center at the Tully Smith House portion of it. And right now we're in the blacksmith guild, or blacksmith shop, that was built by the Blacksmith Guild here in Atlanta.
Alex Beeler participated in the design and construction, didn't he?
Right. Alex was one of the originators of ABANA, which is the Artist Blacksmith Association of North America.
Right.
And he started things down here. Now, Alex was more of a writer than a blacksmith, but he had such a love of blacksmithing that he decided that everybody should get a chance to get a hand on it if they wanted. So he started up a guild, and we have professionals and we have amateurs. We have a little bit of everybody in here. We've taught people over here from 8 to 80.
Well, what if I'm wanting to get started in blacksmithing? How can a guild help me do that?
Well, actually, that's how I got started.
Oh, really?
I just happened to call over here one day back in '82, and they said, well, we have meetings once a month, and we could come over and watch a demonstration, and then if we wanted to, we could just pull up a chair or grab a piece of iron or whatever you wanted to do to try out your hand at it. And I just decided to come on over.
All right. Well, it's a good support system, really, too, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, I would never have been able to go professional if I hadn't had the support system, because just knowing what kind of tools, where to get them, especially because we are set up 1840s here.
Right.
We specialize in older tools. Everything has to be hand. There's no electrical, other than the lights we brought in for today, but there's no electricity in the shop itself. So everything has to be done by hand, and as you saw, the hand bellows right here. We have a big bellows in the ceiling that's a two-stage, and it comes down and comes into the back of the fire so that we can get the coal heated up enough to get to a welding fire.
Well, I've visited 2 or 3 guilds while we're making this series, and every one I go to, there are demonstrations. And the one time I visited Tully Smith, you were giving a demonstration making a cable knife.
Right, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make actually several knives out of a piece of cable. Now, this is all steel. This is not the type that you would find on a guy wire of a telephone pole, so don't start running out and cutting off guy wires. This is steel cable that you would use for hoisting. And what we're going to do is basically weld it together so that it's all one piece. All these multitude of wires will all become one piece of metal, and then we'll make a knife out of that. And then back up here, we'll open it up to create a handle. Now, this is a small example. It's a smaller cable of something that we will be doing.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And so you'll weld this together and draw it into a blade, and then weld the tang together, and then back off to make a handle.
Right. If you don't weld this, then all this would unravel.
Right.
So you just create a stopgap on each end, and then you can unravel it enough to create the handle.
So this is really an intermediate to advanced project. A beginner really wouldn't be able to weld quite so well.
No, and especially on this type of a forge, because we are a hand pump forge. This is probably the hardest type of welding that you ever really run into.
Right.
Now, the cable welding of all the multitudes of welding is the easiest, but it's still, I've seen a lot of masters pretty much not be able to use this forge.
Well, I've heard people say it's difficult to get a weld, but
well, if
you did a great job on the last one.
If you're not used to this particular forge, it's much harder than a modern shop.
Well, let's get started.
Now, as we start heating up the cable, we're going to be cleaning it off because there's going to be impurities in the cable. It's been outside, it's had water and dirt in it. So you try and get it as clean as possible so that you don't have all the dirt going into your weld. It'll make a less clean weld and create impurities in the metal. Now, if you want to make a knife for use, then you definitely want that because you don't want it breaking off sometime while you're using it.
And what are you putting on there?
Now that's just borax right there. And we use it as a flux. It's a cleaning type of solution. And actually, the borax will pretty much burn off as we go along. All it does is clean it and help it tack a little bit. There's all kinds of fluxing agents, but really just plain old 20 muletium borax is what we normally use.
Yeah, that's what I use too. So, works great.
Now with this next heat, we're going to put it back into the fire and bring it to a little milder heat and go ahead and start drawing it out.
There are a lot of different ways to make Damascus steel, and one of the best Damascus blade makers in the United States is Keith Kilby in Jefferson, Georgia. We visited him in his shop just the other day. Keith Kilby, how you doing?
Good morning.
Good to see you. We're at Foxwood Forge in Jefferson, Georgia with master bladesmith Keith Kilby. Keith made all these knives, and there's some very, very beautiful ones here. How did you get started in knife making, Keith?
Got started about 7 years of age, wanted a knife and couldn't afford one. Had to make my own.
All right. That's a great story. You've obviously come a long way since then, and you've gone through some changes in the way you make knives, I understand. Tell us about that.
When I first started, I did what's called stock removal work. I took a bar of steel, bandsawed the shape of the knife out and ground it to shape, heat treated it, and then assembled the handle. I currently forge all the knives to shape, which I start with a bar of steel, place it in a forge and heat it, and hammer it into shape.
Most knives today are made by stock removal process.
Correct, by stock removal.
So there's been a real change in terms of your technology. You've gone from a more modern technology to an older way of making knives. These have some very beautiful patterns in them. What kind of steel are we talking about
This
here?
is called Damascus or pattern welded steel.
And it got its name from?
From the Mideast, from Damascus, Syria.
Oh, really? Oh, really? So this is a really old process. Huh? How do you do it? I mean, how do you get all these patterns in the steel?
The material starts as a block with 2 or more dissimilar steels. In this case, we've got a straight carbon steel and a pure nickel. This is placed into the forge and brought up to a welding heat. Forged, welded together, folded, and re-welded numerous times to get up to the layer count that we need in the finished piece. In most cases, it's between 200 and 500 layers.
So it's steel, nickel, steel, nickel.
Correct,
and
in
then
an
it's just
alternating arrangement.
mushed together and welded together. Then where do you go from that point?
After I have the number of layers that I want in the bar, I then fold the bar into the final shape. This is the size that I need to forge the knife I need.
And then you bring it down to this shape
This
here?
is all done on the hammer and anvil here.
And what is this called?
This is a small drop point hunter.
Ah, it's beautiful. Where do you go from this point?
From here, from the rough forged blank, the blank is then profiled into the exact shape of the finished piece. It still has all the forge scale on the exterior, but the edges have been cleaned up and shaped 100%.
And what kind of knife is this here?
This is a Bowie knife.
Is it? It's a beautiful knife. Okay, once you're here, how do you get it to where you can see all these patterns and everything?
All right, from here, it goes into the grinding room. The piece is ground into its final shape. All the forge scale is removed. It's basically 100% finished here except for heat treatment and adding the handle.
And these patterns begin to show up as you grind down through this?
The patterns are somewhat apparent as you grind, but they're really revealed after the heat treat when you etch them.
And so you've gotten to this point, you've ground it down, and you heat treat it? How do you do that?
It goes back into the forge, brought up to the correct temperature, and then quenched in oil.
Do you use a special forge? Knife makers use a special forge?
I have a propane-fired forge. You hear it humming away in the background there. It's a little bit different shape than most ornamental blacksmiths use.
And then it's put into a quench, and then you say acid is used to etch?
Correct. Acid brings out the final pattern in the steel. The acid attacks the different materials in different manners and reveals the pattern.
That's really beautiful. So you can kind of predict what pattern you're going to get, but not 100%.
Yes.
Right. Do you actually put the handles on these knives as well?
All the handle work is done here as well. I use almost 100% natural handle materials. From this selection here are some of my favorites. This is fossil walrus ivory.
Wow.
some exotic hardwoods from South America, mastodon ivory.
Mastodon. Now, how do they get mastodon ivory?
This is found in regions where they have permafrost. When they have their spring thaw, the rivers run out of their banks and the stuff is uncovered from erosion.
And so, do handles add to the value of the knife? Or?
There are a lot of times when the handle material is well over 50% of the total cost of the piece.
Well, they're certainly very beautiful knives. I don't know if I've ever seen prettier work. Thanks a lot for showing them to us.
Thank
Keith.
you.
This knife right here, I've noticed this on the background. How do you get that in there?
That's all done.
I had one of the older blacksmiths tell me once that the devil will get you if you hammer cold.
Yeah.
So,
Grateful Dead says that too, I believe.
yeah, probably.
The devil will get you for beating cold iron.
Well, we've got, this is starting to get warm on my end, so I'm going to cool it off a little so I can hold this thing.
Oh yeah, good
Oh,
fire.
yeah.
Working like butter, as George would say.
Now, as you're drawing it out, you'll notice my hammer is going in different directions as far as out from the center. Your hammer is what actually moves the metal. So we go ahead and use that movement to push it one way or the other. Okay, now it's starting to get cool again. Don't try and push it, especially with a weld. So we go right ahead and back in. Put it in your vise. You want to untwist and hammer down just a little bit. And then twist it back in, and while you're still hot, go ahead and spread, because they won't spread exactly right if you don't give them a little help. And this one's spread out a little wide on that side. So we'll just open it up. Open this more on the bottom. And that one side to, of course, the one going towards the camera is the one that's opened the farthest. Okay. Twist it back just slightly so that you create your even handle. Now try to do this as much the first time, because once this is opened up, every time you heat it up after this, you run the risk of burning off more and more of these little wires. Now each one will end up being slightly different. You can see how this other one is more of a center oval type. This one creates more of a cone the way it just went.
It's pretty. Really
I like
nice.
to let things go the way they want to.
Right.
Especially if I'm not trying to make 50 of them. That way they each have their own little personality.
Right. Well, while we were at Tully, there was also a Civil War reenactment going on, and we got to learn something about artillery, in particular cannons. Let's go over and see what we found out. We're here with Lieutenant Bill Patton of Stevens Light Artillery. Welcome, Bill.
Hi.
Now this, what would this be called right here?
This is an artillery piece. It's a cannon.
A cannon,
Yeah.
okay.
One artillery piece.
It has several pieces that are forged and some of them that are cast. Why don't you tell us something about the forged pieces here?
Well, the forged pieces would involve the tires on the wheels, which would be here and there, just the metal parts on the outside. The rest of it's wood. The cap squares, the cheek straps, these are the cheeks. Any of the pieces on the carriage itself as far as implements, all of these would be forged. Everything on the gun as far as being made out of iron would have been forged. The cast pieces, there might be one or two cast heavy pieces on the trail in the back. As far as casting is concerned, the main casting would have been done would be on the tube. This is a bronze tube and it is cast.
Were there many foundries in the South? Did the South have to rely on other places for its cannon?
Well, at the beginning of the war, they used a lot of guns that were left over from the Mexican War, and they also used a lot of guns that were captured in arsenals spread across the southeast United States, and those were distributed out amongst the armies, the artillery units. Some of the foundries in the South, there were foundries that were making things like farm implements and heavy machinery. These were transferred over. The casting processes were relatively well known for making heavy equipment, and those could be used, as far as sand casting could be used, to cast guns. Bronze guns were relatively easy to cast as far as the sand casting process is concerned. They would be cast in the rough with sand casting, and then the details, the trunnions, which are the side pieces where it mounts, the front here, and the bore in here would have been machined out for smoothness, and they would have machined off the outside after the casting processes to clean it up.
And what about ammunition? What kind of ammunition and how was it made?
Well, there were basically 3 different types of ammunition for field pieces during the war. There was solid shot, which was solid cast iron balls, and those were sand cast. There were shell and case, which were spherical cast balls, but they were hollow on the inside, and those had to be cast hollow. And they would be, you could fuse those with different types of time release fuses, and they would have an exploding substance, a matrix on the inside, so you could set them off to explode at a certain range or time of flight. The last type was a canister, and it was really a mechanical round, which was just a tin can full of iron balls that you'd fire out of here. The rifled iron guns that were made during the war were also cast, and then they would be machined, and the rifling would be machined into the tubes. They fired a bolt, they called it a bolt, their ammunition, and they had canister, but their main type of ammunition would be the shell or solid bolt, and it really looked like a bullet, but it would have a band of a softer metal like brass or copper around it that would engage in the rifling grooves, and the rifling would spin it and give you greater accuracy and range. That's why they went to the iron guns, although they still were using the bronze guns during the war because of their great use for short range against infantry.
And once something like this had developed a problem, there wasn't much way of repairing it except sending it back to a foundry. I mean, a blacksmith on the spot couldn't really repair a cast.
As far as a tube was concerned, a blacksmith, really there wasn't anything he could do with it. An entire tube, if you had a problem with the tube, you would remove the tube from the carriage, which was relatively easy to do. You could just take the cap squares off and take the tube off and replace it with another tube. But that tube would have to either be discarded or sent back to the foundry. And the foundry would, instead of fixing it, you didn't fix tubes, you basically melted them down and made new ones.
But all this other stuff a smith could have fixed on the spot, and
Right.
they carried someone with them?
Right. They had a man in the unit. 4 artillery pieces would have been considered a battery. And each battery should have a traveling forge. And a traveling forge was a small wagon that was really a portable forge. It had its own box for tools and a bellows apparatus and a firebox for the forge. And they had a gentleman who went along with each battery called an artificer. And the artificer was skilled in making everything that went along with the artillery piece, the carriages, the limbers, everything that went along as far as being made out of iron. He could manufacture the worms here for retrieving powder bags. He could manufacture these pieces, which are the implement hangers, cap squares, straps. He would also have to have a large stock of supply of stock on hand so he could make these implements in case they were damaged. And things were damaged quite often during combat. He would be very busy right after a battle. He could replace or fix tires. He did a lot of wheelwright work. He actually had to do a lot of carpentry if he had to replace pieces of the carriage, because these are all white and red oak. And he, like I said, he had to make cheek squares. He would also have to be able to fix the water buckets down here and things like that. So he did a little bit of everything. But he basically was a blacksmith, but he did a lot of everything else. So he was called an artificer.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for all the information.
Sure.
Hi, Jesse.
How you doing?
Pretty good. This is Captain Jesse Bailey of the 5th Confederate Infantry. Tell us a little something about the guns we have here. Were these handmade rifles, or were they mass-produced?
Well, a little both. What we have on this particular pile here, we have most of them are imports. So you have your P-53 Enfield. You have an Austrian-made rifle. Now there's another Austrian. Those were real heavily used in the Army of Tennessee. And when you say handmade, they were hand-fitted. They used the same lathes and casting for the barrels and small parts, but to make the rifle fit exact, they would hand fit them. They would hand file them. You'd have a stocker that would make sure the stock was, you know, the metal fit real tight, that sort of thing. So they weren't mass produced as a Springfield Army would be. Those parts would actually interchange. These probably wouldn't. You have a 50-50% chance of them hand fitting with another Austrian at the same time.
Right.
Enfield's the same way here. These are a little bit better made weapon. The South imported way over about 700,000 of these.
And where did they get these?
These came from Enfield, or excuse me, from England, not Enfield. They call them the Enfields because that's, there was an Enfield armory was set up to make government-issue weapons for the English soldiers, the English government. So they just called them Enfields, but actually it was a lot of small gunsmiths and small firms that would make the same pattern, but they were called various different guns, usually by the maker's name, would be on the stock, like Price and Redmond, this sort of thing. You also had your London gun trade on your Enfields, and they were a little bit better gunsmiths, and they would put their name on the lot plate. They weren't embarrassed to put it on the stock, and so it might say E.P. Bond, L.A. Company, Potts and Hunts, that sort of thing.
Right,
So
right.
a lot of gun makers in England there.
Well, were any guns made in the in the Confederacy?
Oh yeah, there were several. Well, actually, some interchangeable guns would be like the Richmond Arsenal up in Richmond, Virginia. They stole the Harper's Ferry dies early on in the war, and so basically they were Springfields that the Confederacy, you know, they would change parts. They would use sometimes brass nose caps and butt plates, as compared to the Springfield standard, which used iron. They would substitute, and those were pretty much interchangeable. The later ones, anyway. And let's see, you had Cook & Brother over here in Athens, Georgia. We don't have a Cook & Brother to show you, but they were a two-band rifle. And they were on the Enfield standard. They looked a lot like an Enfield, except they were shorter. They were a two-band rifle. And those were also, as you would call them, hand-fitted weapons. The difference is they might have different sights from one gun to the next. The furniture might be a little bit different in that the trigger guard might be one or two piece, but they're basically all looked about the same. As far as interchangeability of parts, you had a chance of them interchanging, but probably more rare than not, probably. So the Cook & Brother was a nice foundry, though, and they made around 10,000 arms, I believe, in Athens, Georgia. So
I noticed you have a sword there. Would that have been? Was it common for cutlery to be hand forged here in the Confederacy?
In the Confederacy, sometimes it was a lot easier to buy import weapons as opposed to setting up your own foundry. And so in this particular case, this is all Southern-made weapon. A lot of times the Confederacy would just make the hilt and guard, and they would buy the actual blades from, like Saal in Germany, and they would buy and then hand fit the blade into the you know, the handle here in the guard. So, but this is actually a Southern product all the way.
Right.
There's a Leech and Rigdon sword here.
Well, I noticed you have a rather unusual pistol. Could you tell us something about your pistol here?
This is a LeMat revolver. I'll start off by saying it's not a very common weapon that you would see an infantry officer with. It's a very formidable weapon in that it's a 9-shot revolver. It's .42 caliber, the originals were, and it also has a shotgun barrel underneath. And so you have 10 shots total. This had no match, North or South, in the Civil War. This is a very formidable pistol, even by today's standards. Right. Of course, it still is a muzzle-loading type gun. And so how you would load the cylinder is you would put your powder down and then put your lead projectile down and push it down to the chamber there. If you wanted to load the shotgun barrel, just like a muzzle loader, you had a little ramrod here with it. And you put your powder in a .63 caliber ball, bucket ball, whatever you want to use down in here.
Amazingly intricate.
Very formidable weapon. Actually, Colonel LeMat, which he just called himself a colonel, he wasn't in actuality, and General Beauregard designed this particular weapon. They tried to get it made over here in the South, actually by Cook & Brother Foundry and various other foundries. When they couldn't do that, they didn't succeed in that, they took the patent over to Paris, and they, I guess about a little over 3,000 of these came over. Between 1861 and
very
65.
uncommon gun, really.
When you consider the amount of infantry officers, yeah, you would probably see maybe one in a couple thousand carrying one of these. The more common weapon would be like a Kerr English revolver, or something like a .36 caliber Colt or a Confederate Colt copy. But if you had enough money, and the officers in the Confederacy were given a little extra money because they had to buy their own equipment, uniformage. And so if you had enough money or what left over, You could buy just about anything you wanted to. So I chose this weapon right here.
All right. Well, thanks for all the information, Jesse.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
To obtain your personal copy of Alan Rogers' Forge and Anvil companion book, including project details and expanded videotapes of Forge and Anvil projects, send $15 for the book, $35 for tapes, or $39.95 for both. Call 1-800-359-4040 for credit card orders. Make checks payable to the University of Georgia and send them to Forge and Anvil, University of Georgia, Georgia Center, Athens, Georgia, 30602-3603.